It started with a whisper, barely audible over the chatter of the courtroom. A name, a title, a symbol of centuries-old privilege, and suddenly, it was weaponized. Imagine, for a moment, being born into a life of unimaginable wealth, historic duty, and public adoration. You have the world at your fingertips. Every glance from the media, every headline in a newspaper, every social media post is scrutinized. And yet, for some, the weight of that crown, or in this case, that title, is more than a badge of honor. It becomes a tool, a lever, a dangerous key that can unlock fortunes or destroy reputations. Today, we explore one of the most shocking royal controversies in recent history. Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, panicking after a furious judge finds him for allegedly using his HRH title to extort money. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. But let's pause here. Did that just sink in? A prince, a member of the British royal family, allegedly using a royal title not as an honor, but as leverage in financial dealings? It sounds like a plot pulled straight from a Netflix drama. Yet, this is very real, and it's happening right now. Before you dismiss this as gossip or sensationalism, consider the stakes. This scandal doesn't just involve one man. It threatens the reputation of an entire institution, challenges centuries of tradition, and exposes raw human vulnerability behind gilded walls. Now, let's go back a step. Picture the scene, a courtroom buzzing with anticipation, cameras discreetly positioned, reporters clutching their notepads, microphones straining to catch every word. Prince Harry sits there, the once confident Duke now appearing tense, his jaw tight, hands trembling slightly. The air is thick with anticipation. For decades, the royal family has projected an image of stoic grace, carefully curated for public consumption. But behind the polished exterior, human error is universal. Mistakes are inevitable, and in this instance, the consequences are monumental. You might be asking, how did it get this far? How does a man of privilege, someone who had access to every resource imaginable, find himself in a courtroom facing accusations of financial misconduct tied directly to his royal title? To answer that, we have to understand the unique pressures of royal life. Imagine living every day under the microscope, knowing that each decision, each word, each gesture is dissected not just by your family or advisors, but by millions across the globe. Mistakes aren't just personal, they are public. And when money enters the equation, the stakes spiral exponentially. The alleged scheme, as sources suggest, involved using the HRH, His Royal Highness title in negotiations that crossed legal boundaries. To the untrained eye, it might seem innocent, even logical. After all, a royal title carries weight. It carries influence. It opens doors that are otherwise closed. But when influence turns into leverage for personal gain, the line between privilege and entitlement blurs dangerously. And it is precisely that blurred line that has led to the judge's fury, the public outrage, and Harry's current state of panic. Now, let's take a moment to consider the human side of this. Prince Harry is not just a title, a figurehead, or a headline. He is a son, a brother, a husband, a father. He has lived under the twin pressures of familial expectation and global scrutiny. For years, the media and public have cast him alternately as the rebel prince, the sensitive humanitarian, and now, the controversial figure at the center of a financial scandal. One misstep, one questionable decision, and suddenly, all that scrutiny intensifies. Imagine receiving a notice of a fine not just as a slap on the wrist, but as a public condemnation that could haunt you for the rest of your life. That is the situation he faces today. But why does this matter now? Why are we talking about it this moment, rather than 6 months ago or 6 years ago? The answer is timing, and the timing is explosive. Recent revelations, leaked documents, and media coverage have brought this case into sharp focus. The judge's ruling, coupled with viral clips and global headlines, has made this story unavoidable. Everyone is watching. Everyone is talking. And Harry? He is scrambling, not for excuses, but for survival of reputation, credibility, and personal security. Consider the emotional roller coaster here. On one hand, there is anger, public, judicial, familial. On the other, there is panic. A visceral, almost palpable fear that spreads not just through Harry but through everyone in his orbit. Every phone call, every meeting, every public appearance is now layered with tension. And if you think this is just a story about one man, think again. The implications ripple outward. The monarchy itself, charitable organizations, public trust, and even international perceptions of the British royal family are all at stake. And let's not forget the media storm. Every outlet, from tabloids to respected news agencies, is dissecting every aspect of Harry's actions. Headlines scream accusations. Social media explodes with opinions, memes, and viral videos. What once might have been confined to private discussions in palace corridors is now broadcast to the entire world. In this environment, even minor missteps are magnified into global controversies. The psychological pressure on Harry is immense. Living under a lens that never blinks, never looks away, never forgives. Here's where the story gets even more gripping. Sources indicate that the judge's reaction was more than just a professional reprimand. It was a moment of public and personal reckoning. The fine itself, though substantial, is only part of the story. The fury, the verbal admonishments, the clear message that royal privilege does not exempt anyone from accountability. These elements make the scandal unforgettable. For Harry, the consequences are immediate and terrifying. For the public, the story is irresistible, a peek behind the curtain at a world normally hidden, a tale of power, error, and the raw humanity of one of the world's most scrutinized individuals. But let's zoom in on the tension in the room. The judge, a figure representing centuries of law and fairness, looking directly at Harry, making it clear that titles mean nothing in the face of legal responsibility. Imagine the weight of those words, their echo in a room filled with history and tradition. Imagine the fear and disbelief coursing through someone who has always lived within a protective bubble. This is not just a legal battle. It is a moral and reputational storm. And yet, despite all this, there is still a twist lurking in the shadows, a revelation waiting to surface, a detail so shocking it could redefine the entire narrative. So what comes next? What twist awaits that will escalate the drama beyond anything the public has seen so far? We can't reveal it yet, but here's a clue. The consequences are not just financial. They are personal. They are familial. They ripple through charity organizations, media channels, and even political corridors. And when the world thinks it has seen the full picture, that is when the most shocking revelation emerges. A revelation that forces every observer to question. Was this a desperate gamble, a calculated move, or something even more complex? The stage is set. The tension is palpable. The world watches, waits, and wonders. Prince Harry, once a symbol of privilege and optimism, now faces one of the greatest crises of his public life. And for you, the audience, the story has only just begun. Over the next hour, we will peel back the layers of this scandal, reveal the courtroom drama, explore the media frenzy, uncover secret palace reactions, and follow Harry's frantic attempt to navigate a situation spiraling out of control. You will witness drama, irony, betrayal, and human vulnerability on a scale few could have imagined. And here's the kicker. Just when you think you understand what happened, the narrative twists again. Because in a world where titles carry power but actions carry consequences, nothing is as simple as it seems. One mistake, one misuse, one court ruling, and the life of a prince can change forever. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine living a life that most people can only dream of. A life filled with palaces, private jets, lavish vacations, and a global audience hanging on your every word. For Prince Harry, this was not a fantasy, it was reality. From the moment he was born, the world watched. Cameras captured his first cries, photographers chronicled his every step, and the press dissected his every expression. To outsiders, it looked like the perfect life, privilege, fame, admiration. But behind the royal facade, life was anything but simple. Harry's early years were shaped by enormous expectations. Born into one of the most scrutinized families in the world, every smile, every tear, and every misstep was a public event. There was the ever-present pressure to be the ideal prince, to honor family tradition while carving out a personal identity. His brother, Prince William, seemed destined for the throne, and the media constantly compared the two, fueling a narrative of rivalry and expectation. Harry, aware of this, developed a dual existence. The public persona of the cheerful, charming prince, and a private self grappling with grief, loneliness, and the unrelenting weight of public judgment. Yet, despite the pressures, Harry embraced his royal privileges. The HRH title, His Royal Highness, was more than a formal designation. It was a ticket into rooms that few could enter, a key to influence, a symbol of respect. Every handshake, every introduction carried weight. Doors opened in London, New York, and across the globe at the mere mention of his title. VIPs, diplomats, and celebrities bowed to the authority embedded in the letters HRH. To Harry, it was a tool that, when wielded responsibly, could create enormous opportunity for charity work, personal projects, and international influence. But privilege is a double-edged sword. The same title that grants access also creates isolation. Every action is judged, every decision scrutinized, and every mistake amplified. When Harry tried to live a normal life, falling in love, attending university events, or pursuing military service, the world was there to watch. No mistake could be overlooked, no triumph could be enjoyed privately. And in a life so visible, the human need for freedom, for control, and for agency becomes desperate. It was in this environment that Harry's sense of responsibility, entitlement, and occasionally recklessness began to collide. He wanted to make a difference, to redefine what it meant to be a royal in the 21st century. He invested his time in charity work, military service, and public appearances, often highlighting causes that resonated deeply with him: mental health, veterans' issues, and global humanitarian aid. But even in his philanthropy, the weight of privilege lingered. With every charitable endeavor, there was the unspoken understanding that his royal status amplified his voice. And when that voice carries power, the temptation to leverage it in other arenas is never far away. Behind the palace walls, life was also marked by personal tragedy. The death of his mother, Princess Diana, left scars that never fully healed. Harry and William were thrust into adulthood too early, navigating grief while under relentless public attention. Trauma, loss, and the pressure to conform to royal expectations created an internal storm. Harry developed a deep awareness of vulnerability, his own, and that of the people he wished to help. But he also became acutely aware of the paradox of privilege. A life that seems enviable can also be suffocating, isolating, and fraught with moral dilemmas. This duality, the public adoration and private struggle, is key to understanding Harry's choices. While the outside world sees luxury, wealth, and influence, the inside reveals constraints that few can comprehend. Every move is strategic, every conversation potentially consequential. And in this delicate balance, the seeds of controversy often germinate unnoticed. Privilege creates opportunity, but it also magnifies error. It is in this environment that the alleged misuse of the HRH title begins to make sense, not as an act of pure malice, but as a complex mix of desperation, ambition, and flawed judgment. Harry's life before the scandal also illustrates a stark contrast between image and reality. On the one hand, he was a prince adored worldwide, capable of drawing attention and resources to causes he cared about. On the other hand, he faced systemic pressures, media intrusion, family expectations, and the constant negotiation of personal desire versus public duty. The tension between freedom and obligation became a defining feature of his life. It is this tension that would later intersect with legal boundaries in ways that shocked even those closest to him. Consider, for instance, his ventures into philanthropy and business. Harry co-founded charitable initiatives that raised millions and brought attention to global crises. He engaged with powerful figures, negotiated complex agreements, and leveraged his name to create impact. These actions, while noble in intent, also demonstrated the potential for blurred lines. Where does advocacy end and personal gain begin? At what point does influence become a commodity? These questions, theoretical in ordinary life, became acute in Harry's world, where HRH was not just a title, but a tool capable of opening doors and shaping decisions in unprecedented ways. In the lead-up to the courtroom drama, insiders suggest that Harry's sense of urgency intensified. The post-pandemic world, heightened scrutiny from the press, and mounting personal pressures created a climate ripe for miscalculation. The stakes were no longer abstract. They were tangible, immediate, and potentially catastrophic. A single misstep, an ill-advised deal, an overreach, a misinterpreted gesture, could set in motion events that would challenge the very foundation of his life. And that is precisely what seems to have happened. The irony is palpable. The HRH title, once a symbol of opportunity and honor, became the very thing that triggered crisis. In his pursuit of influence, visibility, or perhaps even financial security, Harry allegedly crossed a line that even centuries of tradition could not protect him from. What was intended as leverage, a means to an end, became a public spectacle of legal and personal reckoning. And as the courtroom saga unfolded, the world watched a prince, once confident, now vulnerable, grapple with the consequences of wielding privilege without restraint. But the story is not simply about wrongdoing. It is about human complexity. It is about the collision between public expectation and private desire, between centuries-old tradition and modern ambition. It is about a man navigating a world that offers everything and, simultaneously, demands perfection. And in this collision, scandal is almost inevitable. Harry's alleged misuse of the HRH title is less an anomaly than a symptom of the pressures that define royal life. Pressures that most people cannot imagine, and that even those within the palace walls sometimes fail to fully comprehend. Yet, even in this environment, the consequences are startling. The courtroom, the judge's fury, the fines, all are stark reminders that privilege does not exempt one from accountability. And while the world debates ethics, legality, and morality, Harry himself faces a reality that is intensely personal. He is confronted with questions that many never have to answer. How do you protect your reputation when every action is public? How do you balance personal need against institutional responsibility? How do you survive a scandal that touches not just your wallet, but your identity, your family, and your legacy? The tension escalates when considering the ripple effects beyond Harry. Every palace aide, every family member, every charity and partner organization connected to him is affected. Decisions made in private become public crises. Missteps are magnified. Trust is tested. Relationships strain. And as the courtroom saga unfolds, the intersection of human vulnerability and institutional power becomes painfully clear. The fallibility of a prince, the limits of titles, and the consequences of actions under the relentless gaze of the world form a narrative that is both captivating and cautionary. By the time the scandal reaches the media, public fascination has reached fever pitch. Headlines scream accusations, news segments dissect legal filings, and social media erupts with commentary ranging from outrage to sympathy. Every detail, real or rumored, is scrutinized, debated, and amplified. For Harry, the privilege that once opened doors now carries the weight of public expectation, judgment, and inescapable attention. And in this environment, panic is a natural response. The human need to control perception clashes with the uncontrollable nature of global media scrutiny, creating a perfect storm of fear, desperation, and uncertainty. As the world watches, we begin to understand that the story of Prince Harry is not just about wealth, titles, or scandal. It is about the human experience under extraordinary circumstances. It is about navigating expectations, making choices, and facing consequences in a life where mistakes are magnified beyond measure. And in this context, the alleged misuse of the HRH title is both shocking and, in a way, inevitable, a convergence of privilege, pressure, and flawed human decision-making. But the most gripping part of this story is yet to come. The courtroom, the fines, the judge's fury, these are only the beginning. The ripple effects, the hidden revelations, and the behind-the-scenes drama within the palace walls will escalate the tension to levels few could predict. Every action, every word, every decision now carries enormous consequences. And as Harry navigates this precarious landscape, one question hangs over everything. How far will a prince go to protect himself, his family, and his legacy when the world is watching? And just when you think you have seen the full extent of the stakes, the story twists. Because privilege can be both a shield and a weapon, and in Harry's case, What was once a mark of honor may now become the catalyst for unprecedented scandal. But what comes next will change everything, and no one saw it coming. It all started quietly, almost imperceptibly, behind closed doors. At first, no one outside Harry's inner circle noticed. A few private conversations, discreet emails, and seemingly routine meetings. But beneath the surface, a plan was taking shape. A plan that would blur the line between influence and impropriety, between privilege and exploitation. Imagine sitting in a room where history, power, and money intersect, where every word carries weight, and every action has consequences far beyond what anyone could anticipate. This is the world Harry entered, a world where the HRH title became more than a symbol, it became leverage. The public reaction was visceral. Fans who had previously admired Harry were now divided. Some expressed shock and disappointment, questioning how a prince could misuse his title in such a manner. Others leaned into sympathy, framing the situation as the pressure of royal life pushing a human being to desperate measures. Social media polls, trending hashtags, and viral commentaries reflected a world struggling to reconcile the image of a beloved prince with the allegations now circulating. The conversation wasn't just about legality, it was about morality, human behavior, and the vulnerabilities of privilege. Media outlets wasted no time framing the story in ways that would maximize attention and engagement. Headlines like "Prince or Predator," "The HRH Scandal Shocks the Globe," and "Royal Privilege Misused?" Courtroom drama unfolds flooded digital platforms. Video clips of the courtroom, heavily edited and punctuated with dramatic music, were shared repeatedly. Every detail, from Harry's expression to the judge's intonation, was analyzed and reanalyzed. Even satirical shows and late-night hosts joined the commentary, blending humor with pointed critique, ensuring the story infiltrated multiple layers of public consciousness. The frenzy extended beyond conventional media. Online forums buzzed with speculation about the motivations behind Harry's actions. Was this a calculated gamble? A desperate attempt to secure financial stability? Or an impulsive misjudgment amplified by decades of privilege and pressure? Each theory generated heated discussion, with users posting purported screenshots of documents, photos from events, and even cryptic social media posts as evidence. In this environment, rumors spread as quickly as verified facts, creating a chaotic narrative that even legal authorities struggled to contain. Meanwhile, the human dimension of the story continued to unfold. Friends, family members, and insiders leaked small details that fueled public fascination. Whispers of palace meetings, urgent calls, and internal disagreements surfaced, often accompanied by dramatic interpretations of Harry's mental and emotional state. Observers reported that the strain of global scrutiny was palpable, that every public appearance seemed calculated, and that Harry's team was operating under enormous pressure to control the narrative. The intensity of the media spotlight amplified the stakes of the legal battle, creating a feedback loop where each new revelation provoked further coverage and analysis. One particularly explosive element was the release of select documents and communications. While heavily redacted in official filings, leaked versions circulated online, suggesting a level of sophistication and deliberation in the alleged scheme that many had not anticipated. Emails referencing the use of HRH influence, strategic planning notes, and proposals to potential partners painted a picture of a complex operation that extended far beyond casual misunderstanding. For the public, this was electrifying. The idea that a member of the royal family could engage in such high-stakes maneuvering was both shocking and irresistible. The media frenzy also highlighted the contrasting narratives surrounding Harry. Some outlets emphasized his humanitarian efforts, framing the allegations as a tragic lapse in judgment against a backdrop of dedicated service. Others painted a darker picture, suggesting deliberate exploitation of privilege. This dichotomy intensified public debate and engagement, keeping the story at the forefront of news cycles for weeks. Commentators debated ethical boundaries, legal responsibilities, and the personal consequences of public missteps, while social media amplified every nuance, rumor, and analysis into viral content. Global attention meant that the story was no longer confined to Britain. Newspapers in New York, Sydney, Tokyo, and Dubai ran front-page articles dissecting the allegations. News networks broadcast live analyses of courtroom footage, expert panels debated the legal and moral dimensions, and cultural commentators weighed in on what the scandal revealed about royalty, privilege, and human behavior. The internationalization of the story added pressure. Not only was Harry facing a national legal and social reckoning, but he was also navigating global judgment, often in cultural contexts that added complexity and nuance to every interpretation. Amidst this whirlwind, one thing became clear. The court of public opinion was as unforgiving as the legal court. Every misstatement, hesitation, or awkward interaction was seized upon by media and the public alike. The line between speculation and fact blurred, creating a landscape in which Harry's panic was not just personal but performative, whether intentional or not. His every reaction was being watched, dissected, and discussed. This external pressure compounded the legal stakes, creating an environment of relentless scrutiny and emotional intensity. But the public outrage wasn't solely about Harry. It also reflected broader societal tensions regarding power, privilege, and accountability. For some, the scandal symbolized the excesses of hereditary authority, a reminder that titles and lineage should not shield anyone from ethical responsibility. For others, it was a human story, a reminder that everyone, regardless of status, is capable of mistakes, lapses in judgment, and moments of desperation. The story resonated across multiple layers of society, appealing to curiosity, empathy, judgment, and schadenfreude all at once. And while the media frenzy raged behind the headlines, the palace and Harry's inner circle were working frantically to manage perception, control leaks, and mitigate damage. Advisors, lawyers, and family members were in constant communication, strategizing, and attempting to anticipate the next wave of coverage. Decisions were made rapidly: what to release publicly, how to respond to speculation, and when to issue statements. Yet, even with careful planning, the story seemed to have a life of its own, growing in intensity, spreading across platforms, and creating new waves of scrutiny that even the most experienced strategists struggled to contain. The tension reached new heights when social media influencers and celebrities weighed in. Viral videos, opinion threads, and live-stream discussions proliferated. Some framed Harry as a tragic figure, battling the constraints of a rigid system and personal trauma. Others depicted him as reckless, abusing privilege in ways that undermined public trust. The rapid amplification of every narrative, true or false, created a climate of uncertainty and panic, making it increasingly difficult for any controlled messaging to take hold. Every day brought a new headline, a new twist, and a new emotional spike for the global audience. And yet, amid all this chaos, there were hints that even more dramatic revelations were on the horizon. Leaked documents hinted at deeper layers of the alleged scheme. Insider testimonies suggested negotiations and communications that had not yet reached the public eye. Each new detail threatened to escalate the drama even further, raising questions not just about legality, but about ethics, morality, and the very nature of power. For Harry, the storm was far from over. Panic, once confined to the courtroom, had now become a constant companion, amplified by the relentless scrutiny of the public and media alike. The media frenzy, the public outrage, and the global commentary had transformed a legal matter into a cultural phenomenon. Every facet of Harry's life, past and present, was being examined. Every decision, every action, every relationship was under scrutiny. And as the story continued to unfold, it became clear that the intersection of privilege, influence, and human error was far more combustible than anyone could have imagined. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. Behind the polished doors of Buckingham Palace and the discreet offices of royal advisors, the fallout from the courtroom and media frenzy was being digested in real time. For Prince Harry, the storm outside the courthouse was only half the battle. The other half was navigating the complex, delicate, and sometimes ruthless world of palace politics. Advisors, many of whom had dedicated decades to the royal family, were suddenly forced to respond not just to legal complications, but to a global scandal that threatened the reputation of the monarchy itself. The reaction was intense, strategic, and, at times surprisingly human. The first priority, insiders say, was containment. Advisors recognized that Harry's actions, whether misjudged or deliberate, could have far-reaching implications for both the family and the institution. Every conversation, every consultation, and every decision needed to be carefully managed. Some advisors urged immediate public statements to control the narrative, while others counseled patience, emphasizing the need for thorough legal review. The tension between speed and caution created internal friction. Move too fast, and mistakes could be made. Move too slow, and public perception could spiral out of control. One of the key figures in this drama was the private secretary, the individual responsible for coordinating the family's schedule, communications, and often the management of crises. Sources suggest that the private secretary worked around the clock, drafting statements, coordinating with legal counsel, and attempting to anticipate media reactions. Each message was crafted to balance transparency with discretion, acknowledging the gravity of the situation while protecting both Harry and the broader reputation of the monarchy. The pressure was immense, and the stakes extraordinarily high. Meanwhile, senior advisors responsible for legal and ethical oversight were reviewing the case in painstaking detail. Every email, every contract, every internal note was examined for potential vulnerabilities. The alleged misuse of the HRH title had triggered a cascade of questions. Had proper protocols been followed? Were other royal privileges at risk of misuse? Could the scandal set a precedent that would require changes in policy or enforcement? The answers were not straightforward, and the advisors faced the difficult task of protecting the institution while also supporting a family member caught in a maelstrom of public scrutiny. Beyond professional considerations, there was also a deeply personal dimension. Advisors, many of whom had relationships with Harry spanning years or even decades, were acutely aware of the emotional toll. Sources indicate that some advisors expressed concern for Harry's mental health, noting signs of panic, sleeplessness, and anxiety. One senior aide reportedly described the situation as the most intense crisis we've ever faced in modern times, not just legally but personally. They recognized that public scandal, legal jeopardy, and internal palace pressure were converging in a way that could be devastating if mishandled. Family dynamics added another layer of complexity. The royal household operates not just as a hierarchical institution, but as an intricate network of relationships, alliances, and loyalties. Harry's actions were viewed through multiple lenses. Some family members reportedly felt anger or disappointment, others worry and empathy. Advisors had to navigate these emotions delicately, mediating between protective instincts and professional obligations. Leaked reports hint at tense palace meetings where strategy, optics, and loyalty collided, with advisors trying to reconcile the best interests of the institution with the personal needs of a prince under immense pressure. Communication strategy became paramount. Every public statement, social media response, and media interaction was scrutinized. Advisors debated phrasing, timing, and delivery, aware that one misstep could exacerbate the situation. For example, acknowledging the fine publicly risked drawing more attention to the misconduct, while remaining silent could fuel speculation and conspiracy theories. The balancing act was delicate: transparency versus discretion, accountability versus damage control. Every decision carried consequences for both Harry and the monarchy. Some advisors reportedly suggested proactive engagement with the media, framing Harry as a human being under extraordinary pressures rather than a figure abusing privilege. Others argued that acknowledging personal struggles could be politically risky, potentially undermining public confidence in the institution. The debates were intense, often late into the night, and the pressure of real-time public scrutiny made every choice urgent. These discussions were not academic. They were tactical decisions that could determine the course of Harry's legal and reputational trajectory. Internal communications also had to account for international observers. Harry's alleged scheme and the subsequent scandal had already attracted global attention, meaning that advisors had to anticipate responses from media outlets, investors, charitable organizations, and foreign governments. Even minor misstatements or inconsistencies could trigger waves of criticism abroad. The advisors were acutely aware that in a world of instant communication and global social media, The court of public opinion extended far beyond the UK, making strategic coordination essential. One particularly tense moment, insiders reveal, occurred when the advisors discovered a leaked email that hinted at further complications. The email, allegedly sent to a potential partner in the financial deal, suggested more aggressive use of the HRH title than previously disclosed. The leak intensified the media frenzy and forced advisors to reassess their messaging and legal strategy. Panic was reported in the inner circles as they scrambled to contain damage, manage fallout, and anticipate the next wave of revelations. Yet, amidst the chaos, some advisors also saw opportunities. They recognized that if Harry navigated the scandal carefully, demonstrating accountability and transparency, it could be framed as a story of personal growth and resilience. It could highlight the human side of royalty, showing that even princes are subject to scrutiny, error, and consequences. Advisors weighed these narrative possibilities carefully, balancing the short-term imperative of damage control with the long-term objective of maintaining public trust. The emotional stakes were equally high. Advisors observed Harry's visible panic, noting rapid shifts between anger, frustration, and anxiety. Reports indicate that he spent long hours in consultation with lawyers and PR teams, attempting to anticipate every possible development. Some advisors reportedly tried to offer emotional support, counseling, or even mediation with family members, but the intensity of the scandal made such interventions complicated and delicate. The human dimension of the crisis, panic, fear, and the instinct for self-preservation, was as much a part of the advisor's challenge as any legal or media considerations. As the advisors worked tirelessly, the world outside continued to react. Headlines multiplied, social media trends persisted, and public speculation remained relentless. The advisors' efforts were not just about managing Harry. They were about managing a narrative, controlling perception, and preserving institutional integrity. Every leak, every rumor, every viral video became a potential escalation point. The pressure on the advisors was immense. They had to navigate public outrage, legal scrutiny, internal family dynamics, and the emotional well-being of the prince simultaneously. And yet, despite careful planning, the situation was evolving faster than anyone could control. New documents emerged, leaked communications appeared, and previously unseen layers of the alleged scheme came to light. Advisors realized that even the best-laid strategies were reactive at best. The human element. Harry's decisions, emotions, and responses remained unpredictable, adding uncertainty to an already volatile environment. Each day brought new challenges, new revelations, and new pressure to act decisively while managing multiple high-stakes variables. The reaction of royal advisors underscores a central truth of this scandal. Behind the public headlines and courtroom drama, a sophisticated, high-pressure crisis management operation was unfolding in real time. Legal strategy, media control, emotional support, and institutional protection were all being orchestrated simultaneously, creating a high-stakes environment where one misstep could have catastrophic consequences. For Harry, the advisors' responses were both a lifeline and a mirror, reflecting the severity of the situation and the magnitude of the choices ahead. And just when it seemed the palace had contained the immediate fallout, a new twist emerged. One that would challenge the advisors' plans, escalate panic, and force Harry into an even more precarious position. The details, still partially hidden from public view, suggested a breach that could undermine every strategy, every statement, and every calculated response. The stakes had never been higher, and the drama was far from over. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The scandal, already a whirlwind of legal proceedings, public outrage, and media frenzy, took an unexpected turn with the emergence of secret leaks. For Prince Harry and his advisors, these leaks were not just inconvenient, they were a ticking time bomb. The documents, emails, and private communications that suddenly surfaced painted a more detailed, more intricate picture of the alleged misuse of the HRH title. Each leak added new layers of complexity, new angles of scrutiny, and new pressure on Harry, his legal team, and the royal household as a whole. The first leaks appeared in the form of select emails sent to business partners, investors, and associates. These communications, carefully phrased yet suggestive, implied that Harry's royal influence could be a decisive factor in negotiations. Phrases such as, with the backing of HRH, or as a member of the royal family, were highlighted, raising questions about intent and ethical boundaries. While these statements might have been intended as marketing or credibility boosters, in the context of the ongoing investigation, they became potential evidence of coercion or extortion. The media quickly seized on these leaks, broadcasting every nuance, dissecting each line, and speculating on the prince's motives. Beyond emails, leaked documents revealed internal planning notes, strategies for leveraging royal connections, and communications between Harry and his advisors. The documents suggested a level of sophistication and premeditation that many observers found shocking. For some, it confirmed suspicions that the alleged scheme was not merely a lapse in judgment, but a calculated effort to use privilege for personal gain. For others, the leaks were a stark reminder of the pressures of royal life, where private actions are constantly monitored, and even minor miscalculations can spiral into public scandal. The hidden revelations extended beyond written communications. Sources close to the palace reported that internal memos and confidential briefings had been compromised, exposing sensitive discussions about financial arrangements, legal strategy, and public relations tactics. These leaks created a ripple effect, forcing advisors to adjust plans, anticipate media reactions, and reassess legal positions. Each new revelation increased the stakes, amplifying Harry's panic and intensifying the pressure on everyone involved. The initial idea, according to insider reports, was deceptively simple. Harry, aware of the tremendous pull his royal title had on influential figures, allegedly considered ways to use that pull in negotiations for financial gain. On paper, it might have seemed innocuous, networking, seeking support for projects, leveraging prestige, but the reality was far more precarious. Every handshake, every reference to his HRH status, was a potential escalation. The title, meant to signify service, respect, and heritage, was suddenly entangled in business strategy, a tool in negotiations where morality and legality began to blur. Sources suggest that the scheme began with subtle hints, small enticements to demonstrate influence. In meetings with potential investors, charitable partners, and even private consultants, Harry reportedly referenced his royal status in ways that went beyond mere credibility. Imagine what could happen if we had a member of the royal family supporting your project, a leaked message allegedly suggested. To many, it sounded like marketing, a form of endorsement. But to legal authorities, and eventually to the judge presiding over the case, the implications were far more serious. The suggestion was clear: financial advantage could be gained through access, prestige, or influence derived from a royal title. A notion that is strictly regulated and heavily scrutinized in the UK. One might ask, why would Harry risk this? Was it desperation, ambition, or a belief that his position shielded him from accountability? The answer, like much of this story, is complicated. Harry, like any human, is driven by a combination of needs and desires. The desire to make an impact, to secure financial stability for his family, to exert control over a life long constrained by expectation. And when opportunity meets pressure, poor decisions often follow. The human element is crucial here: the panic, the misjudgment, the rationalization that can occur when someone believes they are operating within the gray zones of privilege. The mechanics of the alleged scheme involved a series of meetings and communications that appear, in hindsight, increasingly bold. Reports indicate that documents, contracts, and private correspondence were used strategically, each reference to HRH subtly signaling leverage. There were proposals presented to investors and potential partners that, while cloaked in the language of partnership, contained implicit pressure to comply. With the support of a royal figure, the documents allegedly read, "You will gain access, credibility, and exposure unavailable to others." It's a clever use of status, but in legal terms, it crossed the line from endorsement into coercion. Meanwhile, those closest to Harry reportedly had mixed reactions. Some advisors warned him of the risks, urging caution and legal review. Others, caught up in the momentum of ambition, may have encouraged experimentation, viewing the title as an asset to maximize influence. The dynamics within these inner circles are often overlooked by the public. In environments where loyalty, ambition, and high stakes collide, rational judgment can be clouded. Even the most careful individuals can make miscalculations when surrounded by voices that amplify confidence, urgency, or desire. Adding another layer of complexity is the global dimension. Harry's dealings weren't confined to the UK. They extended to investors, organizations, and individuals around the world, each unaware, or perhaps unaware enough, of the legal restrictions surrounding the use of a royal title. International communication, cultural differences, and varying interpretations of influence created fertile ground for misunderstanding, misrepresentation, and, ultimately, legal scrutiny. What might appear as a savvy international partnership to one party was interpreted as coercion or even extortion by another. The subtlety of this distinction is critical. And it is precisely this subtlety that would become the focus of intense courtroom debate. But it wasn't just the mechanics of the scheme that were problematic, it was timing. The world was watching, and the context could not have been more volatile. In the aftermath of previous royal controversies, every movement, every negotiation, every public appearance was analyzed under a microscope. Social media amplified minor details into global headlines. Journalists scrutinized emails, contracts, and leaked documents with a ferocity rarely seen outside corporate scandals. In this climate, any hint of impropriety was magnified. The alleged scheme, initially discreet, could not remain hidden. And when it surfaced, the reaction was immediate, intense, and unforgiving. The revelation of the scheme triggered a cascade of responses. Legal authorities began examining communications, contracts, and proposals. Media outlets, sensing a story that combined power, scandal, and human error, reported extensively, dissecting every angle. Public sentiment shifted rapidly, oscillating between disbelief, anger, and intrigue. Meanwhile, Harry's personal life became inseparable from the controversy. Every decision was questioned, every motive analyzed. The stakes were no longer hypothetical. They were immediate, personal, and potentially catastrophic. Perhaps most striking is the psychological toll this period took on Harry. The alleged scheme, conceived in relative privacy, became a crucible of stress, fear, and desperation. He reportedly spent countless hours consulting legal advisors, reconsidering decisions, and grappling with the consequences of his actions. Panic, once an abstract concept, became tangible. Every meeting, every phone call, every appearance carried the weight of potential exposure. The combination of public scrutiny, legal jeopardy, and personal reflection created a pressure cooker environment, and in such conditions, even small errors can escalate into major crises. And yet, the story contains an ironic twist. The same HRH title that allegedly became a lever for influence also served as a shield of sorts, a symbol that complicated the case and fueled public fascination. Titles carry both prestige and responsibility. They grant access, but they also attract scrutiny. They create opportunity, but they also impose limits. In Harry's situation, this duality became the focal point of controversy. The very thing that could open doors legally and socially became the catalyst for legal action, media scrutiny, and personal panic. The unfolding drama also highlights the interplay between perception and reality. To the public, it may appear that Harry consciously sought to exploit privilege for personal gain. But in reality, the lines are blurred. Pressure, ambition, personal need, and the opacity of royal life combined in a way that made missteps almost inevitable. The narrative is not simply one of greed. It is one of human complexity, the collision of extraordinary circumstances with ordinary impulses. It is a reminder that even those born into privilege are susceptible to error, temptation, and misjudgment. Finally, as the alleged scheme reached the attention of the judiciary, the situation escalated beyond internal concern into full public and legal reckoning. Court filings, fines, and the judge's eventual outburst represent the culmination of months, or even years, of maneuvering, subtle persuasion, and decisions that would ultimately come under intense scrutiny. The courtroom became the stage on which history, tradition, and law collided. Every detail, Every communication, every implicit suggestion was dissected. The public watched, riveted by a story that was as much about human fallibility as it was about royal scandal. But the most dramatic twists were yet to come. As the courtroom saga began, new revelations surfaced, details that no one outside the inner circle could have predicted. Messages leaked, documents emerged, and the full scope of the alleged scheme became clearer. And just when the public thought they understood the story, a revelation would appear that would alter everything, casting doubt, raising questions, and escalating the stakes to levels that were previously unimaginable. The stage was set, the tension palpable, and one question hung over it all. How far could influence be stretched before privilege became liability? And more importantly, what would Harry do next to navigate this unfolding storm? But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. The courtroom was tense, charged with an energy that seemed almost physical. Every seat was filled, every camera lens trained, every journalist's pen poised to capture the unfolding drama. Prince Harry sat in the defendant's chair, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, eyes darting nervously. For a man who had spent a lifetime navigating public scrutiny, the weight of this moment was different. This was not a photo shoot. This was not a charitable event or a carefully orchestrated press conference. This was a judge, a symbol of centuries of law and authority, looking directly at him, ready to mete out consequences. And it was clear, the judge was furious. From the moment proceedings began, the atmosphere was electric. Courtrooms are designed to impress, intimidate, and enforce authority, but today the air seemed heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves bore witness to the scandalous weight of the accusations. Every word spoken, every objection raised, every motion filed was amplified by the knowledge that this was more than a legal matter. It was a public reckoning. The judge's tone was firm, precise, and unforgiving. He did not merely reprimand. He delivered judgment in a way that underscored the seriousness of the allegations and the breach of trust implied by the misuse of the HRH title. To understand the judge's fury, one must grasp the unique gravity of the allegations. This was not a trivial financial misstep, nor a simple contractual dispute. Using a royal title to influence decisions for personal gain crosses into the territory of extortion, or at least the appearance of coercion. In British law, titles and positions of authority carry specific boundaries. They are not merely ceremonial. They are intertwined with ethical, social, and legal obligations. By allegedly leveraging the HRH designation, Harry stepped into a gray zone that, to the judge, could not be tolerated. The court was making it clear, privilege does not exempt anyone from accountability. From the opening statements, the courtroom drama unfolded like a tightly written script. Legal teams presented documents, emails, and testimonies meticulously, yet each piece of evidence seemed to provoke not just analysis but anger. The judge's reactions were unmissable: sharp glares, pointed questions, and an unmistakable tone of incredulity that resonated throughout the room. "Do you understand the seriousness of invoking your title in these circumstances?" he asked. The words were direct, almost accusatory, and they carried the weight of centuries of legal precedent. Harry, despite his composure, could not mask the tension in his responses. The public could see it, the cameras could capture it, and the judge certainly noticed it. One particularly charged moment involved a series of documents that allegedly outlined a strategy for leveraging HRH influence. As the judge reviewed them, he paused, flipping pages slowly, eyebrows knitted in concern. The room fell silent. Every observer sensed that the gravity of the moment was escalating. Legal jargon and procedural niceties gave way to the human reality of the situation. Here was a man of immense privilege facing public accountability for decisions that, whether intentional or misjudged, crossed the line. Titles are not a commodity, the judge finally intoned, voice echoing. And privilege is not a license to bypass the law. Observers later described Harry's demeanor as a mixture of shock, panic, and disbelief. After years of public life, of navigating media scrutiny and palace politics, he had encountered criticism before, but never with this intensity. Never in a legal setting where every word was binding, every decision recorded, and every misstep could have material consequences. Panic is not a simple emotional response. It is a physiological reaction to stress, fear, and perceived danger. Reports suggest that Harry's heart rate spiked, his breathing became shallow, and his mind raced for a way to mitigate the unfolding disaster. The courtroom, in all its formality and authority, became a crucible of human emotion. But the judge's fury was not merely performative, it was rooted in principle. The legal system exists, in part, to uphold fairness, integrity, and societal norms. When an individual, regardless of status, appears to manipulate influence for personal gain, the integrity of that system is threatened. By addressing the alleged misuse of the HRH title so forcefully, the judge was sending a message that resonates beyond the immediate case. Privilege and power carry responsibility, and when boundaries are crossed, consequences are inevitable. This was not just about Harry. It was about precedent, ethics, and the public trust in institutions that hold society together. The courtroom also became a theater of contrasts. On one side, there was the human figure of Harry, nervous, calculated, attempting to navigate the proceedings. On the other, the judge embodied authority, tradition, and legal principle. Every exchange highlighted the tension between personal narrative and institutional accountability. Observers noted the irony. A prince, accustomed to commanding attention and respect, now faced a situation where titles could not shield him and influence could not protect him. It was a moment of dramatic reversal, and the world watched in fascination. Media coverage amplified every detail. Legal analysts dissected the judge's tone, gestures, and statements, while commentators speculated on the implications for Harry, the royal family, and even broader society. Social media erupted with reactions. Some sympathetic, others critical, many incredulous. Memes, viral posts, and opinion threads proliferated, each adding layers of public interpretation and scrutiny. In this environment, panic and perception became intertwined. Every observer had an opinion, and every opinion fed back into the pressure cooker surrounding Harry. The intensity was relentless, the scrutiny unyielding, and the stakes extraordinarily high. One of the most dramatic moments came when the judge imposed fines for the alleged misuse of the title. While the monetary value was significant, the psychological and reputational impact was arguably far greater. The gavel's fall marked not only a legal judgment but a symbolic moment, a warning that titles, influence, and privilege are bounded by responsibility. Witnesses described a brief but palpable pause as Harry absorbed the implications. The fine was not merely financial. It was emblematic of the accountability that even a prince cannot escape. Every journalist, advisor, and public observer sensed the magnitude of the moment. This was history unfolding in real time. But perhaps the most unforgettable aspect of the judge's fury was the interplay between discipline and human vulnerability. While legal principles demand fairness, the courtroom also revealed the profound human stakes. Harry's reactions, tension, fleeting panic, and visible stress provided a stark contrast to the stoicism expected of someone in his position. Observers noted the almost cinematic quality of the scene, a figure of immense global status reduced, momentarily, to a person confronting consequences, judgment, and public scrutiny. It was a reminder that behind titles, privilege, and wealth exists a human being subject to the same fears, errors, and emotional turbulence as anyone else. As the hearing progressed, the dialogue between the judge and Harry escalated, revealing not just legal concerns but moral and ethical dimensions. Questions were posed about intent, awareness, and judgment. Each answer required careful navigation, yet every response carried the weight of interpretation. A misstatement, hesitation, or misstep could, and did, have consequences. It was not merely a legal proceeding. It was an ethical trial, a public examination of character, and a test of the boundaries between privilege and responsibility. The courtroom became a stage where every word mattered, every gesture was scrutinized, and every outcome had long-lasting implications. And then came the moment that crystallized the judge's fury, a pointed admonition regarding the broader implications of misusing influence derived from a royal title. The crown is not a tool for personal gain, the judge declared, voice resonating with authority. The statement was both legal and symbolic, reinforcing the principle that actions, regardless of status, carry consequences. Harry, visibly affected, absorbed the gravity of the statement. Panic, previously simmering beneath the surface, became tangible. The realization that privilege cannot insulate one from accountability was now undeniable, and the stakes, for reputation, for family, for public trust, had never been higher. But the story does not end there. Behind the courtroom doors, private discussions, legal consultations, and rapid-fire strategizing were underway. Advisors whispered, lawyers debated, and Harry confronted the reality that every decision, every move, every word from this point forward would be scrutinized relentlessly. The judge's fury was only the beginning. The public, the media, and history itself were watching. The narrative was evolving, and one revelation, still concealed, would escalate the drama even further. What seemed like a legal resolution was, in fact, only the first act of a scandal that would continue to unfold in unpredictable and shocking ways. And just when it seemed the pressure could not intensify, a detail emerged, an overlooked document, a leaked communication, a subtle but significant error that threatened to change the trajectory of the case entirely. The courtroom, already charged with tension, became the epicenter of uncertainty. Every observer, every participant, and every commentator suddenly realized this story was far from over. The judge's fury had set the stage, but the full drama was only beginning to reveal itself. The stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined, and the fallout promised to ripple far beyond the walls of the courtroom. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The moment the courtroom drama broke to the press, the world exploded. Headlines screamed accusations, social media erupted with memes and outrage, and news channels scrambled to analyze every detail. For Prince Harry, the private stress of the courtroom was instantly multiplied by the unrelenting gaze of a global audience. What had started as a legal matter transformed overnight into a full-blown public spectacle. Every word, every gesture, every nuance was magnified, dissected, and broadcast across continents. The panic that had been quietly simmering in the courtroom now had an audience in the millions. From London to Los Angeles, from tabloid stands to Twitter threads, the narrative spun out of control. One moment, the story was about alleged misuse of the HRH title. The next, it became a commentary on the entire royal institution, with debates ranging from ethical standards to the very relevance of monarchy in the 21st century. Journalists parsed legal filings for hidden implications, while amateur sleuths and online commentators speculated about motives, alliances, and behind-the-scenes palace conflicts. The court's official statements barely contained the storm, and every day brought a fresh wave of leaks, commentary, and speculation.